Still looks great after all these years, doesn't it? So, welcome to a look at the Crysis Maximum Immersion mod. Now, before I begin going through the installation process, I'll very briefly show you a few shots that are on ModDB. And although they are low resolution shots than what you'll see on your own screen, it'll still give you an idea of what to expect. So, the Crysis Maximum Immersion mod. As you can see at the top here, the aim of the mod is to get the best out of the graphics of this classic game but make it as natural as possible. So it talks about not having over-processed shaders, and the mod contains all of the current best available textures and is optimized for 2.5 and 4K downsampling. It also mentions the tweak guide and the hotkeys, which I haven't really experimented much with at the moment. So the features it has are high resolution textures, Rigel's texture pack. Rigel, I believe, has done some texture packs before for Quake. That name rings a bell. The HD grass, foliage, palm trees, tree barks and rocks. And then we get the Nanosuit Ultra Classic, better weapon textures like the shotgun, for example, better man-made objects, high quality beach sand, which I remember seeing, HD vehicle textures. I haven't come across many textures yet for vehicles because I haven't played for very long. And it also mentions at the bottom better loading screens. So the tweaks, you've got the downsampling for 2.5 and 4K, the HD shadows and blurred edges, realistic lighting and saturation, and the screen space ambient occlusion, parallax occlusion mapping, and anisotropic filtering, anti-aliasing, FXAA, multi-sampling and super-sampling, and improved depth of field quality as well as high view distance. So that kind of explains what the mod's about, and now I think we should get into the meat and potatoes of it and show you how to install it. So once you've downloaded the 2.5 gig file, extract it to a place of your choosing and then open it, and here you'll find your Crysis installation instructions. Now, I can only comment on an installation with the Steam version, but I did not need to actually install this patch here, so I have ignored this particular section here. So I've moved right along to step 2. Now, initially I did attempt to install the Crytek patch, and I did actually try several different patches, just in case I needed them. And the problem I encountered was that I had a message which would come up and it would say the upgrade patch cannot be installed by the Windows installer service, blah blah blah. And unfortunately the mod developer chimed in with a response. He basically said that the patch is only needed for the retail version of the game. He said, I suppose you have the Origin version that's patched up by default. Now my version's the Steam version, so I decided to go ahead and try the installation without step 1, and I've had success. So I moved straight along to step 2, which is the actual installation instructions, and I opened the Nvidia control panel. If you've got an AMD card, then you'll have to open the AMD equivalent, the Catalyst Control Center or whatever it's called these days, I'm not really sure. Now initially I did follow these settings, but for this video I've actually just set resolution in the game as 1440p. I haven't gone for DSR for this game, because the performance hit when recording, it's just far too low a frame rate. In some cases I saw it drop to as low as about 25, 26. And even at 1440p it still looks fantastic, so you don't have to do this particular step. But if you want to, then you need to open your Nvidia control panel, and then you want to open the Manage 3D Settings section, and then open the section where it says DSR Factors. And what you want to do is to check all of the boxes. The next setting is DSR Smoothness. Now at default it's set to 33%, but the guide recommends, or at least suggests, 66%. Okay, so once you're done with that, just save the settings. The next thing you want to do is to open the program settings and select bin64/crysis.exe. Now when I did this, only Crysis.exe came up, I didn't see bin64. The next thing you want to do is to apply the following settings. The FXAA, you want to make sure it's on. If you're using an AMD card, then it will be called MLAA. The gamma correction you want to select as off, and the anti-aliasing transparency as off as well. Once again, save the settings when you're done. Right, step 3. The next step is to run the game. Now, back on step 1, if you read it briefly, it mentions creating a shortcut. Because I haven't done this step, I've just simply launched it via Steam. So I'm not running the game by a shortcut on my desktop. Once you've loaded your game, go into your in-game options menu and then the system sub-menu and select your desired resolution. So because of the downsampling, for a native 1080p monitor, it recommends you set 2560 by 1440 or 3840 by 2160. And for a native 1440p, as mine is, then you should set 3840 by 2160. And although it actually performed better than I thought it would, I've actually settled for just a standard 1440p resolution so that the game feels far more responsive. The next setting to change is to set the anti-aliasing as off. Don't forget, this is the anti-aliasing in the game menu, not in your Nvidia control panel. And the reason you set the anti-aliasing off in the game is because you don't need it, because you have the DSR and the FXAA or the MLAA selected. If, however, you decide to play on your native resolution, as I have for this video, use the in-game anti-aliasing. Next, go to your advanced settings, set everything to very high, and max out the slider to the right. The next step is to exit the game, and then go to your program files, your Crysis folder, actually where you installed the game, and then open the game folder and find a file called shadercache.pack. You then need to delete this. And the last step in section 3 is to go to your users folder, and then your own name, and then your documents and your My Games, and then your Crysis folder. And then open the shaders folder, and then open the cache folder. You want to delete everything inside that folder. Now, it does mention here that when you launch Crysis with this mod for the first time, the game will look bugged and textures won't be properly loaded for the first few minutes. I didn't really notice much going on in that regard. Maybe a little bit when you're on the plane before you parachute out. There's a little bit of texture pop in and that kind of thing, but it didn't really do much in the way of that for me. So maybe it is because I'm running on an SSD, I don't know. Right, step 4 is actually where you install the mod. So now that you've already unpacked the mod, you need to go into the Crysis Maximum Immersion mod folder. Then you want to open the Crysis subfolder within, and then all you need to do is to overwrite everything in your program files / Crysis folder, and you want to replace it with everything that's in the game folder of your mod download. Now, back to the Crysis Maximum Immersion mod, you'll see that there's also another file inside the main file called Documents, and if you click through to My Games, Crysis and Profiles, in the default folder there'll be a file that's called actionmaps.xml. If you want to have the nanosuit hotkeys, which I haven't actually tried yet, you will need to use this file. Now, if you find your original vanilla actionmaps.xml, which will probably be in your users, your name, documents, My Games, Crysis, Profiles default folder, as we explored earlier, what you want to do is to copy the actionmaps.xml and overwrite your original file with it. And the final step is optional, step 5, but it's optional for people with very high-end GPUs. So what you need to do if you want to enable these extra options is to go back into the mod and go into Crysis, and where you see the game file, you'll see a system.config. Open that up. I tend to use Notepad for this sort of thing. So the recommended tweaks are changing E_LODS, change that to 0, and then R_color grading, change that to 1, R underscore color grading depth of field, you want to change that to 1. And finally, E underscore shadows underscore max underscore texture underscore size, change that to 2048. So once you're done with that, just close the file and save it, and you're now ready to go. And that's it. It's really not that difficult. If you get any problems, just fire me a message in the video and I'll reply as soon as I can. So thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you next time in either Stalker or something else. Bye for now.